OK, now, over the weekend, a new biography by Tom Bauer has left us all open-mouthed about Prime Minister Boris Johnson's upbringing. There are many accounts, from Stanley's absenteeism as a father and his rocky relationship with Boris's mother, to stories about the state of their house. Coleen, you were quite taken aback by it all, weren't you? What did you make of it?
Yeah, I really was. I tell you what I made of it. It kind of... it made me feel sorry for Boris. It made me realise why he is the way he is, you know, or the impression that I've got of him makes sense now because of his upbringing. And it also made me realise how really you can be so affected by the way you're brought up, good or bad. You know, it really can affect your life in the future. And I think it explains a lot about Boris for me.
Did any of you guys read it over?
I didn't read it. I read it a little bit this morning, and I was really upset by what I read of how hard their childhood was, and how Stanley was away quite a lot and au pairs were left to look after the children, and the state of the house as well. Now, I've got OCD. I'd love to go in there and have a clean-up for him. But, yeah, I think it makes people look at Boris in a different way if you read about his upbringing and how hard it was for him, and his relationship with his mum as well. Wasn't great, was it? Stanley was away quite a lot and the kids were left to fend for themselves. And when they got divorced, they were left to fend for themselves even more. So, yeah, it was hard. What I read this morning really changed my views on Boris and Stanley.
Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of this story. This is because, obviously, you know, everybody is influenced by their parents and their upbringing in whatever way. And I think this puts it really well. This is a story of 2 sons, 1 father. 2 twin boys were raised by an alcoholic father. One grew up to be an alcoholic. And when asked what happened, he said, "I watched my father." The other grew up and never drank in his life. When he was asked what happened, he said, "I watched my father." So 2 boys, same dad, 2 different perspectives. I just find that really fascinating when you think of, obviously, Boris Johnson's upbringing and then, obviously, his romantic life, his personal life since then. Your upbringing can affect you, undoubtedly, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to follow the same path.
Yeah, you know, as young children, when you look at it on, like, a psychodynamics, you know, way in regards to what you learn as a child and how it manifests in you as an adult, you learn relationships, all relationships you learn from as a child. And I think, you know, there is parts of you that you want from your parents and there's parts that you don't want. You know, I love my mother to pieces. She was a fantastic mum, but she never used to put herself first, and self-care was something that was, you know, almost last and limited. So I think that's one of the things that I try to not follow within her pattern. And I think I've learned that regards to love and always wanting to care for people and being very empathetic. But for me, it's about understanding when enough is enough so that I can prioritise myself and care for me, most importantly.
Yeah,
I know what you mean there, Judi, because, you know, I loved my upbringing. I loved my parents. You know, my dad had his faults, obviously. He was a drinker, etc. But I remember watching my mum, and there were so many things that I wanted to emulate from her as an adult, but equally there was other things where I thought, I'm never going to do that with my kids. I'm never going to say that. You know, my mum wasn't great to approach about personal things. She didn't like talking about personal issues. You know, when I was pregnant with my first child, who do I want to speak to? The woman that's had 8 kids. And she's like, "Oh, you'll know soon enough." Didn't want to kind of discuss it with me. So I'm very, very open now with my kids. Equally, things that I said I would never say to my children, I hear myself saying, and I think, oh, God, I've turned into my mother.
I think every woman at home is going, yep, we've all done that. What about you, Linda?
Yeah, I'm quite happy that I've turned into my mum, because growing up she was a really, really good mum. She was always there for us. She worked, but she was always made sure that we had dinner and everything. My dad, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't end up with someone like my dad. Now, I love my dad. I mean, he had a great sense of humour and he was quite a good dad, but he was the worst partner going, and he was a womaniser. He had lots of affairs and everything. And so I decided that I didn't want to be with someone that was like him. I wanted to have his sense of humour, but not his infidelities or whatever. But my mum was a brilliant mum, and I think I have turned into my mum. I'm doing exactly the same as my mum does. And I say to to my husband all the time, we've done a really good job with our 3 kids. We really have, you know, and I think they're going. My 2 girls are going to turn into me.
Yeah.
They'll hate this if they're watching this.
No, they won't. They'll be really pleased because you're awesome.
Yeah,
You are. You're
lovely.
great. I think we're all good mums. We've all
Yes.
done all right. All done all right. Now, I do have to say that we reached out to both Number 10 and Stanley Johnson for comment, but they have not responded to us.